بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. مرحبا بكم وبارك الله فيكم. Inshallah, I want to speak about the hadith that ضعف, meaning have weakness in the Muslim impairment, الحديث الضعيف. As relates to the hadith that are weak and how we deal with those particular hadith, or the hukam, the ruling of the usage of a hadith that are da'if, or our need for those particular hadith. Inshallah, I'm going to kind of summarize it and do my best to mention what the ulama of hadith mention in relation to these hadith that are da'if. Because every hadith that is da'if, that is weak or have some impairment in it, or something that is that makes it matruk, rejected, does not necessarily mean such, meaning that every hadith that is termed da'if, it is not the same, and there are different types of weak hadith. I'm not going to get into all that type of terminology, but just want to bring out understanding up to par as relates to how we deal with hadith, because it's not this one brush that we paint, or this one blanket statement. The hadith is da'if, so therefore we don't deal with that narration. Some of the ulama, they have an opinion, and it's about 3 different opinions in relation to the hadith that are da'if. So there's some ulama who say about the usage of the hadith that are da'if is that we can use those hadith mutlaqin, or unrestrictedly. So that means in the halal, in the haram, in the fard, in the wajib, in the fada'il, in tarqib wa tarhib, and other than that, but with 2 conditions. So they say, once again, we can use the hadith in that which is in the halal, we can use it in the haram, in the obligations, in the the obligatory matters in the religion, in those things that speak about the virtue of something, and that which excites a person to do a particular action, or encourages a person to do a particular action. That's the first opinion. But there are 2 conditions that go with that. That one, that the hadith is not so weak, meaning that that it doesn't have a severity of weakness, or it's not too weak. It's not too weak. The second condition they lay down, those who say you can use it, unrestrictedly, is that you don't find anything else in that particular bab. Meaning that, for instance, if you, say if it's an action of, let's say, dealing with the parents, a particular thing, there's no other narration or anything that we can use except that narration that is da'if. It can be used in that particular instance, but it cannot be anything that opposes it. Meaning that if there's no other narration but that, and it's weak, it's not severe, it does not have a severity in its weakness, which is the first condition, it can be used, but you can't find that it opposes anything from the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the first opinion that those scholars mention. The second opinion from the scholars relates to the use of the hadith that are da'if, is that it cannot be used unrestrictedly. It cannot be used unrestrictedly, absolutely. whether it be in the issues of halal, haram, the fara'id, the fard, the wajib, the fada'il, or other than that, in tarqib or tarheeb, or other than that, not the ahkam. It cannot be used at all. And this is the position of a lot of the scholars. And for Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, he said it's not permissible that we depend upon the hadith, the da'if, the ahadith, the da'if in the sharia, that which is not considered to be hasan or sahih. As relates to the first position, you'll find that's the position of like Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, that they will use the hadith that are da'if, that are weak, in relation to those things that I mentioned. But because they did not prefer to use their aql, their opinion, they did not prefer to use their opinion. So they will put the weak hadith of their opinion. This is why you find in the Muwatta Imam Malik, you find hadith that are mursal and munqata', which are forms of weak hadith. You find those in the Muwatta Imam Malik because they prefer to use the weak hadith over their opinions. Now, as I mentioned, Imam Ahmed, he considered the weak hadith to be hasan, but not everyone considered it like that, like he did. So this is why you find sometimes in some of the books of hadith, like Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, he will quote a weak hadith in his Bulugh al-Maram, rahimahullah, and this one he knew it was weak, but he would use them for particular reasons, and even to show sometimes he would use them to show that the madhab that he followed was the Shafi'i, to show that the hadith are more befitting than our opinion in these matters. So that's the first opinion. I just had to double back and retrace that because I left that off. So the first opinion, as I mentioned, was that they can be used without a limit, unrestrictedly, in the halal, haram, the obligations, so on and so forth, whether it be encouragement of good actions. The second opinion, as I mentioned, is that it cannot be used unrestrictedly for whatever, anything, period. And I mentioned the quote of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. Excuse me. The third opinion, as relates to the hadith of the da'if, is that it's kind of like, as you can say, it strikes a balance or a middle path as relates to the hadith of the da'if. Is that there's no need for the hadith of the da'if and the ahkam and the halal and the haram. So there's no need for it in those particular things, mainly in those things that are from the obligations of Islam, those things that are from the Sharia, as Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah said. But يحتاجون, right? There's a need. يحتاجون به. There's a need for it, maybe in the fada'il, a'mal, right, and targhib or tarheeb. So maybe there's a need for it in the in those virtuous actions, like to encourage virtuous actions, and the encouragement of those actions. Yani, meaning, like I say, if you can't find anything else in that particular bab, and that's the third opinion. And this you'll find like Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, he mentions this is his opinion in his book Al-Adhkar, that the ulama and the muhaddithin and the fuqaha, the scholars of hadith and the scholars of fiqh, and other than them, they would use those hadith for those particular reasons, and Allah Ta'ala knows best. He knows best. Excuse me. Excuse me. So in summarization, we can say that there are some conditions, there's some conditions in the usage of the hadith that are da'if as relates to in the fada'il, in the encouraging verse, fada'il a'mal, encouraging virtuous actions, that that the hadith shouldn't be an extreme weakness. It shouldn't be so weak that it can be to the level of fabricated or severely weak and totally rejected. The second condition we can say is that the person, they shouldn't believe that this particular hadith is actually from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They should not believe that it's affirmed with him. They should not believe it. They know that it's weak, so they can't absolutely say it's from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they should make that clear also. One of the third conditions that the scholars of hadith have laid down also is that there should be nothing that opposes that weak hadith that you use from the hadith that are sahih. Also, another condition, the fourth condition, is that the hadith that are weak, they can be used but restricted in the area of encouraging good actions. And Allah Ta'ala a'lam. A fifth condition is that we can say, or the scholars have laid down in relation to the hadith of the da'if, is that it must be included into a general principle, meaning that these hadith must be, that is used, must be found in the religion itself. Like example, there's a narration of Ibn Abbas that is da'if jiddan, it's extremely weak, but if you gather all the different evidences, you find that hadith has an origin in the deen, or that athar has an origin in the deen, such as like the hadith he mentioned Ibn Abbas, you find in the books of Aqaid, of Aqidah, of Creed, that he explained Allah as being Dhul Uluhi wa Ubudiyya ala khalqihi ajma'een. That Allah is the possessor and owner of divinity over all of his creation. The athar is extremely weak, but the meaning is sahih because it has an origin, in other texts. And that brings me to another thing, that as a hadith that is da'if can be raised to a level of hasan, but it be considered hasan li ghayrihi, right? Meaning hasan not by itself, but with supporting evidence, with some help. And Imam at-Tirmidhi, rahimahullah, Abu Isa, he was the one who came up with these terminologies in relation to sahih li dhatihi, sahih li ghayrihi, hasan li dhatihi, hasan li ghayrihi, like this. He came up with this terminology in Mustalah Hadith, that authentic in and of itself, authentic from other than itself, meaning has some support. It's a lower level of hasan, of sahih, but higher than hasan li dhatihi. And then hasan li dhatihi is hasan by itself, and hasan li ghayrihi is a hadith that is not authentic by itself, but it has some support to bring it to the level of hasan. So the da'if hadith also used for that. That can be used, can find other supporting evidences with it to bring it to a level of hasan li ghayrihi, hasan other than itself, or it's good other than itself, not by itself, but with supporting evidence. And the last thing I think I would mention, and I hope that all that I'm saying is clear and I didn't jumble it up, and Allah Ta'ala a'lam, is that excuse me, that the ulama, they mentioned that the hadith that are da'if, that it can be used, as I mentioned, in the bab of targheeb, right, in like encouragement, in those things that are known min ad-deen, from the deen. Those things that are known. If they're not known, then it can't be used. And not in the things that are jadida, that are new. So the things that are already known, that have an origin already in the deen, a general origin in the deen, it can be used for that. But nothing that is new, it cannot be used for those, for the things that are new. Yani, example, like maqam al-sadaqat, establishing, giving charities, or the fadal as-salat, the virtues of salat, or making tasbih, tahleel, azkar, those things that come, in the affairs of the deen from the kitab and the sunnah, that are known. So that's they can be used in that sense, and this is what the ulama say. But as for those things, as for using the da'if, excuse me, hadith, and the things from that are not known, that are jadida, that are new, then you can't use it. So I hope this is once again understood. And this is from what I know from my brief studies and reading the books of the hadith, mustalah hadith, and also having an ustad in which I studied some hadith and some basic terminologies with, and also by asking the people of knowledge, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us, and Allah ta'ala a'lam. So with that, I hope that I did justice to what I was trying to mention in the WhatsApp group yesterday by mentioning or responding to the brother's question. So with that, anything I said was correct. It's from Allah alone. Anything I said that was a mistake. It's from myself and the shaitan, and from the studying of my tongue, the deficiencies of my tongue, and the twisting of my tongue, from the deficiencies of it, and the mispronunciation of the tongue, and from the whispers of the shaitan. So with that I say, Subhanaka wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk, aqulu qawli hadha, astaghfirullah li wa lakum, wa an-nas wa al-taqid. حفظكم الله من كل شر واسكنكم في جنته وثابكم الله.